Hi guys, this is Stu from Mobile Geeks, and right now we're going to compare our newly acquired OnePlus One smartphone with our Nexus 5 over here. Now the Nexus 5 is obviously a smaller device. You've got a 4.95-inch display. I think we can just call it 5 inches for the sake of expediency. And right here on the OnePlus we have a 5.5 inch display. So the first thing you'll notice if I put these devices side by side is that there is in fact quite a significant difference in how much screen real estate you're getting. We do have the software buttons here on the Nexus, so over here we have the choice of using also software buttons, but I've decided to go for hardware buttons because that's my preference, but I think this gives you a little bit extra screen real estate, so I prefer that. In terms of screen resolution though, they're actually both 1080p screens, which they're both fantastic looking screens as well. Over here we have an IPS Plus, and over here we have just plain old IPS. The difference between IPS Plus and IPS, I really couldn't tell you. But let me just say that both of these screens actually look fantastic, have great viewing angles, and there's no pixelation or anything. I think they're both looking pretty great. In terms of how does the size difference actually relate to weight? Well, the Nexus 5 is 130 grams, and considerably a good 32 grams lighter than the OnePlus One, which is 162 grams. So there is a difference there. If you've got this guy in your pocket, it's going to be a different feeling from this chap. Not just because of the sheer size difference, but also because of the weight. But having said that, I mean, on both devices, you've got a very thin bezel line. So I think they're both really optimized. They're both giving you quite a lot of screen real estate for the size of the device themselves. Okay, let's have a quick look at the Nexus and actually put it side by side with the OnePlus to see the difference in thickness. So right here you can see actually the OnePlus is 8.9 millimeters thick, whereas the Nexus 5 is 8.9 millimeters thick rather. The Nexus 5 is 8.6 millimeters thick. So the Nexus 5 is actually a thinner device than the OnePlus, but it's only quite marginal. I think with the OnePlus, because you've got a slightly curved back, I think this maximum thickness is kind of right here in the middle, but around the edges it does obviously feel considerably thinner right here. Neither of these guys actually support micro SIM cards, which is kind of unusual. It's one thing I think every phone should have, is a micro SD, rather not micro SIM, micro SD cards. But apart from that, there are actually other differences too. Over here you're getting the Snapdragon 800, plain old 800, which is a 2.3 gigahertz, and that's backed by 2 gigabytes of RAM. Over here on the OnePlus, however, we're getting the Snapdragon 801, which is just a step above, with a higher clock of 2.5 gigahertz and also a higher clocked Adreno 330 GPU as well. So technically speaking, gaming performance should be marginally better on this guy. And we've benchmarked this chap, and it's definitely in a similar vein to what we've seen on the Samsung. In fact, it is the same SoC from Qualcomm that is used on the Samsung. So, what else is different? Oh yeah, also here, I must add, a very important point, you're getting 3 gigabytes of RAM with your OnePlus compared to the 2 gigabytes I mentioned a second ago over here on the Nexus 5. In terms of cameras, there are also quite considerable differences. You've got an 8 megapixel on the back here on the Nexus 5. This is with one LED, whereas over here on the OnePlus, you're actually getting a 13 megapixel camera, quite as nothing too fancy, not quite as good or in the realm as what we're seeing on the very latest Samsung, but still a very good camera, and that's backed by dual LED lights. While we're here on the back, you can see that they're both using very different finishes. Over here you've got a very nice kind of what they call sandstone black finish, which kind of feels grained, I guess like it's plastic, but it kind of feels more like stone. Would be the best way to describe it. Over here on the Nexus 5, however, you're getting something which is much more rubbery. And of course you have etched into here the Nexus logo. The styling on the Cyanogen, you've got a very subtle one, which is kind of etched into here. It's not raised, it's kind of some kind of laser etching with a Cyanogen logo here at the bottom. Of course, over here in the Nexus, we have the LG logo and very similar kind of certifications at the very bottom. On the front, also there are differences in camera. You're getting a 5 megapixel over here on the OnePlus, whereas on the Nexus you're getting only a 1.3 megapixel. In terms of battery, Interestingly, the Nexus 5 is a non-removable battery, so you can have a 2,300 milliamp hour one there, whereas this guy is a larger 3,100 milliamp hour battery. Now I'm guessing that will give the OnePlus the lead in battery life stakes, just by a touch, perhaps, but because of course you've got a slightly larger screen to power as well, and also a higher clocked and faster CPU. So how that relates to battery life, I mean, we're not sure yet. We haven't done a thorough testing yet with using our battery testing app, but I would guess that this guy has the battery life. Now, in terms of pricing, these guys are both in the kind of similar region. They're both very affordable, and they're both available online. Some people are calling the OnePlus kind of the Nexus 5 killer. There's been a lot of comparisons between the two devices. One of those comparisons, I guess, is because of the software involved. Over here we have Cyanogen, over here we have Google Nexus. They're both very similar, very vanilla flavors of Android. I would say the Cyanogen is going to give you more customization. But apart from that, software-wise, I mean, as you can see, if I pull down this drawer here, so sorry, let's go back. Here you go. So we've got notifications, and then we have, yeah. So very similar thing happens over here. Although on like Cyanogen are giving you a few more options here. You can actually turn on or off Bluetooth and several other things, for example. But as I mentioned, yeah, price. So this guy, I think currently is still around $350. Which is a great price for the device, and I think when it first arrived, we were absolutely bowled over and totally in love with it. But now, well, we have the OnePlus One, which is in the US for the 16GB version. This is actually a 64GB version we have here. The 16GB version is available for a really aggressive price of only $300. So, yeah, I mean, comparison-wise, I would say the Nexus 5 has some very, very serious competition here with the OnePlus One phone. Anyway, this is me for Stu for Mobile Geeks. If you've enjoyed this comparison video, please check out our YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and let us know what you think about these guys in the comments below. Thanks, guys. Bye-bye.